Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 207, the Kecleon Caper. The episode begins with Ash and the gang walking along a path to the next town, as usual, looking for Olivine City, of course. However, they then spot a blimp flying overhead, casting a shadow on them, as Brock comments how huge the blimp was. Ash and the gang question where it was going, as Brock pulls out his guidebook to look for information on the next town, when he finds out that there was actually an airport nearby, so the blimp was likely heading to the airport. So Ash and the gang head there to find out what the blimp was carrying. When Ash and the gang eventually arrive at the airport, they find that a whole bunch of other people, including journalists, were already there. Ash and the gang question one of the journalists why they were waiting for the blimp to land, with the journalist revealing that a lot of journalists were here because this blimp was extremely special and they wanted to report on it, elaborating that the blimp was special because it was a luxury cruise known as the Blue May that was specifically 100 meters in length and was able to carry hundreds of passengers on a worldwide trip and had many accessories that could be considered hotel-like, essentially making the blimp a floating hotel. Ash and the gang were intrigued by all this, but commented on how they had never heard of this blimp before, and figured that they would have if it was so famous, with the journalist revealing that that was precisely the reason why so many journalists were interested in it, because this was its first flight. Just then, the captain of the blimp comes out and requests for anyone who knew how to give Pokemon some medical treatment, stating that a Pokemon doctor would be ideal, but not really necessary. Adding that there was 2 Pokemon that were feeling ill, and the blimp couldn't go to the nearby city of Olivine to go to the Pokemon Center there, since the blimp was too big to fit. That's right, this blimp was so fucking big, it couldn't even dock next to a Pokemon Center. Hearing all this, Brock decides to step in, explaining that although he wasn't a Pokemon doctor, he was a Pokemon breeder, and therefore always had medicine on him in case Pokemon needed it. The flight attendant was more than happy with a breeder as opposed to a doctor, and allows them inside the blimp. Once inside, Ash and the gang admire how beautiful the inside of the blimp was, commenting that it looked more like a mansion hall room. The captain then quickly introduces Ash and the gang to 2 women who had the 2 sick Pokemon, Madison and Alexa. As you would expect, when Brock sees these girls, he immediately develops a massive crush on them. So he introduces himself and requests that Madison and Alexa become both of his girlfriends if he cures their Pokemon. This, of course, leads Misty to drag Brock away by the ear as usual to stop him from further embarrassing himself, as she comments that if anyone needed treatment, it was Brock in the head, and apologized to Madison and Alexa. Ash then questions what was wrong with Madison and Alexa's Pokemon, leading Madison and Alexa to reveal that they weren't exactly sure, they just knew that their Pokemon were acting a little odd, and that's another reason why they wanted a doctor or breeder, so that they could diagnose what was wrong. They then tell their Pokemon, who were nicknamed Greenie and Reddy, both of them being a Kecleon, with Greenie being the green Kecleon and Reddy being a purple Kecleon, meaning that both of these were shiny, unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, to reveal themselves so that they could get diagnosed. However, the Kecleon don't appear, leading Ash and the gang to question where they were. Madison and Alexa apologize and explain that their Kecleon like to be little tricksters sometimes and camouflage to disappear. Madison and Alexa then called out for the Kecleon again, and this time they revealed themselves, getting rid of their camouflage, and slowly jump off the vase they were hiding on to the ground, seemingly very tired. Ash and the gang did not recognize these Kecleon whatsoever, not just because they were shiny, so not the usual Kecleon color, but also because they had never heard of a Kecleon before, and that was because it wasn't even a Pokemon from Kanto or Johto, but unbeknownst to them, it was from an entirely different region. That's right, we got to see a Generation 3 Mon early. Because of never having seen these Mons before, Brock reveals that he unfortunately did not know how to diagnose them, until, however, Madison and Alexa revealed that their Pokemon began feeling ill as soon as the wind pushed the blimp side by side, shaking it. This leads Brock to come to the obvious conclusion that the Pokemon must have been suffering from air sickness, or rather, motion sickness, and reveals that, being the trusty breeder that he was, he had medicine that was supposed to help with that. So, he goes through his bag and gets out some of the medicine, which happen to be pills, and he gives one to each of the Kecleons, along with a piece of Pokemon food, being specialized Pokemon burgers that he had made, not just because it was good to take food with pills, but because the nutrition from the food was also supposed to help with motion sickness as well. Sure enough, Brock's medicine makes the Kecleon healthy again, even as they continue to enjoy the food, and this leads Alexa and Madison to thank Ash and the gang and send the Kecleon back to their hotel rooms. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had arrived outside the docked blimp and examined it, with Jesse being amazed at how big it was, and James commenting that a game of soccer or baseball could be played inside the thing. Meowth retorts, though, that since the place was so big, the soccer ball or baseball would end up getting lost. Jessie was so impressed by the blimp that she claims that Team Rocket should hijack it and make it their own base of operations where they could do anything they wanted inside. So, they decide to break into the blimp's control room cockpit by attaching a rope to the blimp and then swinging in through the cockpit window. Being able to do so because all of the flight attendants were busy, since a lot of them were instructed to take the Kecleon to their hotel rooms, with Madison and Alexa being worried that the Kecleon wouldn't be able to go on their own. Even though they were able to successfully make their way into the cockpit, though, they weren't actually able to drive the blimp because they realized that none of them knew how, which they should have remembered after the whole incident back during the Orange Islands when they tried to fly the blimp that was going to Valencia Island, but they didn't know how to drive that one either. This realization leads Team Rocket to change their plan, with Jesse suggesting that instead of hijacking the blimp, they should instead just steal anything valuable on it, since a lot of the passengers were likely very rich, and therefore Team Rocket could make a lot of money. James really liked this plan, as he hoped that with all the money they got, he could finally afford a mattress and not have to sleep on the hard ground anymore. So, Team Rocket go to sneak around the blimp, as Ash and Misty were showing Madison and Alexa their Pokemon, specifically Pikachu and Togepi, which Madison and Alexa really admired, thinking they were both beautiful, and believing that Ash and Misty must have been really good trainers since Pikachu and Togepi looked very happy. Ash and Misty thanked them for the compliment, but Brock didn't want to be left out, wanting to impress his two crushes, so he sends out his Pineco and holds it up to them for them to examine, but unfortunately, Pineco becomes so excited upon seeing the women that he explodes, covering Brock in soot. Brock was just thankful that he didn't give his Pineco to the girls, and Pineco exploded all over them, and tries to defend Pineco, stating that it just had a dynamite personality. Damn, so funny. As for how Team Rocket's searching was going, they had located Madison and Alexa's room, and started rummaging through it, looking for shit, as the Kecleon blended in with the room to disguise themselves. Team Rocket were having trouble finding anything, but then Meowth yelled jackpot as he managed to find Madison and Alexa's shared jewelry box. However, before Team Rocket could run away with the loot, one of the Kecleon, Greenie, appeared, undisguising itself and sticking out its tongue to retrieve the jewelry box. This leads Team Rocket to attack the Kecleon by jumping on it and trying to pry the jewelry box out of its mouth. However, Team Rocket were then caught red-handed as the ship's captain from earlier came into the room wanting to give a personal delivery of caviar to the Kecleons at Madison and Alexa's request. Because of this, he immediately sees Team Rocket trying to pry open Greenie's mouth and questions why they were doing this, leading Meowth, who wasn't focusing really on what the captain just said, to honestly reveal that Team Rocket were planning to steal the jewelry case. This obviously makes the captain angry. But before the captain could run up to Team Rocket, Greenie runs away, thinking that the captain was mad at him, jumping out from Team Rocket's grasp and disguising itself, being immediately followed by the still disguised purple Kecleon. However, since both of the Kecleon were camouflaged, they couldn't see each other, so they accidentally ran into each other, although they were still able to escape the room, with Team Rocket following them, leaving the captain confused at where the Kecleon just went, and he immediately decides to go inform Madison and Alexa what had just happened. Speaking of Madison and Alexa, they were currently being shown more of Ash and the gang's Pokémon, more specifically, this time, Ash's Totodile and Misty's Poliwhirl. As Alexa and Madison were admiring how happy Totodile and Poliwhirl seemed, Brock wanted another chance to prove that his Pokémon were just as awesome as well, so he wanted to send out his Onix, but Misty stopped him, reminding him that Onix would be too big for this blimp. Even though the blimp was huge, it wasn't that huge. Just then, the captain comes up to Ash and the gang, Alexa and Madison, and informs Alexa and Madison what happened to their Kecleon, stating that they were missing. Also revealing that Team Rocket had tried to steal a jewelry box, but one of the Kecleons ran off with it. Madison and Alexa questioned which one it was, with the captain revealing that it was Greenie. Just then, a flight attendant came up to everyone, along with a gentleman who was another passenger aboard the blimp, and informed everyone that a Kecleon, who was purple, had just stolen a first aid kit from the passenger and disappeared. Realizing that it must have been Reddy who was responsible for that theft, Madison and Alexa declared that they had to find their Kecleon, not just because they were concerned about them, but because they had stolen something from a passenger and they had to retrieve it. The two women, who were revealed to be sisters, then requested Ash and the gang's help to find their Kecleon, stating that they only had 2 hours until the blimp was set to take off again, and they wanted to ensure that they could find the Kecleon before they took off, so that they could help them if they ended up getting air sickness again. Adding that without Ash and the gang's help, it could take them a week and a half to find the Kecleon. Since the last time they had played hide-and-seek with their Kecleon, that's how long it took them to find them, even with the help of the police that they had called at that point. Hearing this, Ash and the gang agreed to help find the Kecleon, as Team Rocket were looking to find Greenie as well, hoping to retrieve the jewelry box for themselves. To help out in their search, they had disguised themselves as flight attendants so that they wouldn't be immediately accused of being criminals. Unfortunately for Team Rocket, they were losing hope since they couldn't seem to find Greenie. However, Meowth gave Jessie and James some motivation, explaining that if they were able to find Kecleon, not only could they give it to Giovanni, but they could also give the jewelry box to Giovanni as well, and that would definitely make Giovanni appreciate them. Meowth continued to fantasize about pleasing Giovanni in his mind, as Jessie and James, now motivated, continued to search with Meowth. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang were searching very vigilantly, looking for any suspicious spots, since the Kecleon could be anywhere, since they could camouflage in with the background. Suddenly, Pikachu noticed a red zigzag that likely belonged to one of the Kecleon on a wall, and it wasn't fully able to be camouflaged. However, before Pikachu could alert Ash of this, Ash and the gang continued into a dining room to search there, so Pikachu got preoccupied and searched with Ash under the dining room table, believing the red stripe not to be anything that significant. However, when Pikachu searches by the dining table with Ash, he ends up locating a red stripe again, under the dining room table. This time, it starts to move a little bit, so Pikachu becomes more concerned, so he yelps out to Ash. The red stripe was revealed to belong to none other than Greenie, who revealed himself and ran away in panic after being noticed by Ash and Pikachu. Ash and the gang tried their best to chase after it, but Kecleon of course camouflaged itself yet again, leaving Ash and the gang amazed at how quickly it was able to do that and disappear. Unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, as they ran past the disguised Greenie, it was hanging on the ceiling and laughing at Ash and the gang's stupidity, having blended in with the white ceiling just as it did the tablecloth. Meanwhile, as Team Rocket was searching for Greenie, they were searching inside of a storage room on the airship, when they instead came across Reddy, the purple Kecleon, who hadn't disguised itself. At least not anymore. In their excitement in finding a Kecleon, Team Rocket forgot that the one they were looking for was actually green, and assumed that Reddy had the jewelry box inside of his mouth. So, they forced Reddy's mouth open with their hands, only to find out that Reddy only had the first aid kit that it had stolen instead. Team Rocket then remembered that the Kecleon they were looking for was green, and Jessie and James want to go search for it, of course, but surprisingly, Meowth didn't, as he figured that giving Giovanni a medkit would be a decent enough gift to him that Team Rocket could still get a promotion, and he just wanted some sort of promotion, man. He was just desperate to at least be put above Giovanni's Persian. Meowth immediately changes his mind, deciding not to settle for a medkit, though, when he and Jessie and James spot Greenie run past them in a nearby hallway. So they go to chase after Greenie, but they soon stop themselves and go back into the room they were in, hiding inside a crate, since they heard Ash and the gang and their very loud footsteps following Greenie, since they had spotted him and were chasing him. I guess Greenie's camouflage didn't work too well after all. When Reddy spots Greenie go by, Reddy immediately disguises itself and waltzes out of the room to join Greenie, as Greenie then disguised itself again, and the two of them ran away. Since Greenie had also disguised itself, that meant that Ash and the gang had unfortunately lost sight of him yet again, so they were forced to check everywhere around the area, including the room that Team Rocket had hid inside, hiding inside the crate. As they go inside, Ash sits on the crate that Team Rocket was hiding in, and checks out the entire room, only to unfortunately find nothing, even with Brock and Misty's help. As Ash was sitting on Team Rocket's crate, squishing them, causing them severe pain, the flight attendant comes in and alerts Ash and the gang that he had just spotted the two Kecleon. So Ash and the gang follow him out of the cargo room and head towards where the Kecleon were. Thankfully for Team Rocket, just as Ash and the gang and the flight attendant leave, Wobbuffet then forcibly pops out of its Pokeball, hearing the pain that Jessie, James, and Meowth were in, and since the box didn't have enough room for Wobbuffet, the box breaks open. The reason why this was technically good for Team Rocket was because Ash and the gang did not spot them, as they were already out of the room by this point, chasing after the Kecleon, which they had managed to spot. Ash and the gang eventually managed to chase the Kecleon outside, but they had unfortunately lost him again, as they now couldn't see him, so they assumed that the Kecleon had disappeared. However, the two sisters, Madison and Alexa, that had already been searching outside, confirmed that Greenie had not disappeared, and he was on the blimp, which Ash and the gang noticed as they saw Greenie climbing up the blimp. As Brock noticed that the two sisters were scared that Greenie would fall off and die, Brock wanted to impress them, so he decided to be heroic and climb up to the blimp, utilizing a lift at the airport. But unfortunately, he can't reach Greenie from standing on the lift, so as everyone watches in actual amazement, Brock manages to pull off some fucking ninja-like moves as he's able to grasp onto the blimp and shimmy across it, attempting to reach Kecleon. Unfortunately, as Brock moved closer to the Kecleon just went further in the other direction, moving away, until it eventually climbed up and reached the top of the blimp. At the top of the blimp was none other than Team Rocket, so Brock could only watch as Kecleon was now facing Team Rocket, who had climbed up to the blimp. Greenie then tried to run across the top to lose Team Rocket, but Team Rocket continued to pursue, with James leading the pursuit and Meowth and Jessie following, as they were struggling more, as they were about to fall off the blimp. Meowth and Jessie couldn't be careful enough, though, since they fell off the blimp, along with James, as Kecleon led them to a steep part of the blimp. With Team Rocket gone, Reddy decided to reveal himself. Yes, that's right, Reddy, the purple Kecleon, was on the blimp as well, but he just disguised himself so that Team Rocket wouldn't find him. But now that Team Rocket was gone, he happily reunited with Greenie, and the two of them climbed down a rope to get down from the blimp, and then run into the airport, with Ash and the gang and Madison and Alexa following, deciding to split up so that they can cover more ground, since calling out for the Kecleon wasn't doing anything, so they knew they had to walk around the place. As for Team Rocket, despite falling off the blimp, they had also saw the two Kecleon go into the airport, so they had followed Ash and the gang in as well, but they had went to a different area of the airport, being the storage room, and fortunately for Team Rocket, they were able to find both Greenie and Reddy, who were hiding behind some boxes, undisguised. As Team Rocket were about to try and capture the Kecleon, starting with Greenie, the two Kecleon then got an idea to confuse Team Rocket by sticking out their tongues and throwing the objects in their mouths back and forth, so they were exchanging the jewelry box and the medicine. By the end of this rapid exchanging, Reddy ended up with the jewelry box, and Greenie ended up with the medkit. The plan had worked, as Team Rocket were now immensely confused as to which Kecleon had the jewelry box. James suggests that they simply pick a Kecleon to try and open, based on a bottle cap magic trick, where he would have the bottle cap in one hand, and then switch them around, and then tell Jessie to pick one of the hands, and if she picked the one that ended up having the bottle cap in it, then they would pick the purple Kecleon, and if she picked the one that didn't have the bottle cap in it, then they would pick the green Kecleon. Jessie thought leaving it up to luck was stupid, so as James began shuffling the bottle cap between his hands, Jessie slapped him in the face, and stomped on him. James tries to counter that his magic trick would work, since his grandpa always seemed to be able to pull it off all the time and pick the right hand. However, this just makes Jessie even more angry, as she reminds James that that had nothing to do with the Kecleon. While Team Rocket are distracted, the Kecleon take the opportunity to run away, with Jessie and James soon giving chase once they noticed. As for Ash and the gang, they spotted the Kecleon as well, as they had reunited, not with the sisters though, only the three of them, and as they go chasing after the Kecleon, they run into Jessie and James and Meowth in the process, each of the groups approaching from opposite sides. Feeling the need to taunt Ash and the gang that they were going to retrieve the Kecleon, and they wouldn't, Team Rocket then throws off their disguises, revealing themselves, and doing their motto, stating their plan to capture the Kecleon, so that they could retrieve the jewelry box. Team Rocket then decided that they were going to try and find the Kecleon before Ash and the gang could, so they knew they had to get away. So James sent out his Weezing and ordered it to use Smokescreen, allowing Team Rocket to make their escape. However, Ash quickly sent out his Knock Towel and had him use Whirlwind to blow away the smoke, but Team Rocket was, of course, still gone. Brock then suggests that Ash and the gang split up again, since the only way that they could beat Team Rocket to finding the Kecleon was if they had the advantage of being able to cover more ground. So, Misty and Ash agree, and the three separate once again. Meanwhile, Brock was walking around the airport by himself, thinking about what the reward might be from the two sisters for getting Greenie and Reddy back, hoping that it involves some epic love, if you know what Brock was talking about. But anyways, Brock's thoughts are interrupted as he spots the two Kecleon running, leading Brock to become embarrassed, hoping that the Kecleon didn't know what he was thinking about. So, he chases after them, and eventually meets up with Ash and Misty while doing so in the process. Ash and the gang then end up chasing the Kecleon back outside, but this time, the Kecleon were not able to escape, as Madison and Alexa, along with several journalists and flight attendants, and the captain were all waiting for the Kecleon outside, and had now cornered them, with the help of the ship's other passengers as well, including the gentleman who lost his medkit. Madison and Alexa then work their way through all the people and go up to their Kecleon, requesting them to give back the jewelry box and the medkit. The Kecleon are just about to oblige and give back the items when suddenly Team Rocket shows up and demands the Kecleon and the jewelry box. Obviously, Ash and the gang were not going to let Team Rocket steal the Kecleon or the jewelry box, so they challenge Team Rocket to a battle, leading Ash to send out his Bayleaf and Jessie to send out her Arbok. Ash tries to make the first move by going for Vine Whip, but Arbok is able to dodge by tackling out of the way, and then hitting Bayleaf with a headbutt. In order to protect Bayleaf, Misty sends out her Poliwhirl and has it use a headbutt of its own on Arbok. In order to make the battle 2-on-2, James sends out his Victory Bell to attack Poliwhirl with Razor Leaf, but of course, before Victory Bell can get off the Razor Leaf, it has to eat James first. But even as Victory Bell does get off the Razor Leaf, the Kecleon are able to save Bayleaf and deflect the Razor Leaf with their tails, as the Kecleon had decided to get involved with the battle as well, at Madison and Alexa's request. Victory Bell then goes in for a second Razor Leaf, specifically aiming for the two Kecleon this time, but the two Kecleon simply deflect it yet again. Arbok then sets its sights on the Kecleon as it tries to use Wrap on them, but Reddy stops Arbok in his tracks by using a lick on it, paralyzing it. In the process, though, since a lick attack obviously involved Reddy's tongue, this meant that he dropped the jewelry box that he was holding. Meowth saw an opportunity to go and grab the jewelry box while no one had it. However, he's stopped in his tracks by Misty's Poliwhirl, who uses Double Slap on him. Victory Bell then goes in to tackle the two Kecleon, but Greenie steps in and uses a lick of his own on Victory Bell, which paralyzes Victory Bell, but in turn releases the medkit from Greenie's tongue. Brock then retrieves the medkit that dropped, as Poliwhirl brings the jewelry box to Misty, who then returns it to Madison and Alexa. Kecleon, both of them, use Psybeam on Meowth, Arbok, and Victory Bell, sending them all flying into Jessie and James. With all of Team Rocket down, Bayleaf then wraps Jessie, James, Meowth, Arbok, and Victory Bell in one of its vines, and uses Vine Whip to throw them blasting off. Brock then hands off the first aid kit to Alexa and Madison, and the two sisters then give it to the gentleman who had lost it, who thanks them for getting it back, leading Madison and Alexa to apologize for their Kecleon's behavior, leading the gentleman to forgive them, exclaiming that he was just glad to have his first aid kit back. Just then, it was time for the blimp to take off, so Alexa and Madison got on and waved goodbye to Ash and the gang, with their Kecleon saying goodbye as well. Brock could barely say goodbye though, as he was crying immensely, ranting about how whenever he had a crush on a girl, they always ended up going away, and how it seemed as though he wasn't destined for love. The episode then ends as the blimp flies away, and Ash and the gang continue on their journey to Olivine City, walking along a path, with Ash commenting how exciting it was to see new Pokémon that it seemed as though no one had ever encountered before, since none of them had ever heard of a Kecleon. Misty comments that what was more exciting than finding new Pokémon was traveling by a blimp, indicating that she didn't have PTSD from the whole situation at Valencia Island. Brock argues that it was better to travel on foot as opposed to a blimp, especially for someone like him being a Pokémon breeder, as he could see a whole bunch of people and their Pokémon. This leads Ash to joke that Brock was actually serious about being a breeder for once, claiming that he never was. Because if he was serious about being a breeder, then he should have known that the Kecleon were airsick without the sisters having to tell him that the ship had rocked first. Ash and Brock begin to argue for once, as opposed to Ash and Misty is actually the one who tries to break up the argument. Huh.